Should Phillip Fulmer fall on the sword? Today's tough question. Your thoughts on today's tough question. What do you think of that direction, Caleb Calhoun? Because right now, Phillip Fulmer, Jeremy Pruitt, Greg Sankey, who made an appearance, the SEC commissioner, and the whole crew, Donde Plowman, everybody you can imagine is sitting in front of the NCAA, and they're trying to argue that Tennessee made the break from Jeremy Pruitt, which is debatable because they paid a severance package to the guy that hired him. So I ask you, should Phillip Fulmer fall on the sword? If he were to go into that room right now at this very moment in time and say, listen, I knew about some NCAA issues that were ongoing. I want to go ahead and say that I did not do the right thing by reporting those. And this is a big leap and a big assumption, but I think it's hard to believe that he was not at least willfully ignorant, as you put it. And I love that phrase. If he went in there and did that, Tennessee's off the hook, right? Completely off the hook, like offthehooksports.com.
No, they're still not off the hook because he gave them. He needs to get. Yes, he should fall on the sword and he should give back his severance package. He should say, "I'm going to give the money back. I don't deserve this. I shouldn't have gotten this." Because
Travis says he 100% would never do that. You're right. Never ever do that. Okay, but the theoretical is if he steps in there and he gives it was a $350,000 he got in a severance package and he gives that back, then suddenly you're looking at a whole different scenario. Tennessee has completely separated itself from the Pruitt fiasco. Tennessee even threw one of its favorite beloved sons under the bus in order to get away from him. So listen, would he do it? Absolutely not. What would it mean for his legacy? That's what I want to get into. He is not going to do that, but should he do that at the end of the day?
Yes, he should do it. He should absolutely do it for a few reasons. One, because he was at the very. Phillip Fulmer was not your typical athletic director. He let it be known when Jeremy Pruitt was his hire. Jimmy Hyams brought this up yesterday, and I completely forgot about it until he said it. Phillip Fulmer had an NCAA violation because he was coaching offensive linemen in some of Jeremy Pruitt's practices at one point. He was very hands-on. He orchestrated a coup to take that job, which is fine, but he orchestrated a coup to take the job and then hire his handpicked coach and then make it very clear his hands are all over this coach and let it. I mean, he was doing interviews about the future of the football program on not a daily, but I'm exaggerating there, but on a monthly basis, he was talking about the future of the football program more than even you felt Jeremy Pruitt was. So he was very hands-on. For all of that to happen, and then him to go to the NCAA and say, oh, guys, I'm totally clear of any of this. I didn't know about any of this. No, he should absolutely fall on the sword. And here's another big reason why. I'm going to say this because Fulmer's a favorite son of Tennessee, and he deserves his respect for what he's done for Tennessee. But I'm going to say this right now. Tennessee's done more for Fulmer than Fulmer's done for Tennessee.
Ouch.
I think
what a national title.
I think the nature of the program in the 90s made it very easy for Tennessee to win a national championship. And I think that was arguably the best job in college football in the 90s at the time. And so it was easy to recruit. There were structural advantages that Fulmer kind of walked into when he got the job because Johnny Majors did the legwork to really build that up. Now, Johnny Majors, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be fired. I mean, how many times was Johnny Majors guilty of losing to a team he shouldn't have lost to once a year?
A lot.
And so I'm not saying that, but and I get the one thing that like the one recruiting score that I firmly give to Phillip Fulmer and nothing else is getting Peyton Manning, which that was a big one. Like you can't undersell that. It was more David Cutcliffe than Phillip Fulmer, but still, getting Peyton Manning was a big one. But I think there were structural advantages at Tennessee at the time that made it the best job in college football, where you could have your pick of coaches who could have won a national title there during that time.
Okay, so we're assuming he's at least willfully ignorant. So that's the assumption that we're having this discussion on. Or even if he's not, if he goes there, a lot of this stuff goes away. If he goes to the NCAA and says, I made the wrong hire, I realized this wrong stuff was going on, But here's the thing that you're overlooking. His legacy should be important to him. Now, you could argue that Phillip Fulmer has put himself in front of the university and his interest ahead of the university at times. But the bottom line is he has a legacy that he wants to maintain. And this is a slight blemish on his resume right now, the NCAA issues and the hiring of Jeremy Pruitt. But Caleb, if he were to come out and say, this is my bad and I've laid low in the weeds for the 2 years since, this would be more than a blemish. This would be a stain on his resume. This would be included in his Wikipedia page. So no, I say absolutely not. His legacy's too important.
Look, sometimes Wikipedia pages have to have a stain. I mean, again, I think Pete Rose deserves that statue in front of outside of the Red Stadium, Great American Ballpark. He deserves that statue. But Pete Rose's first paragraph of his Wikipedia page is going to say that he was banned for betting on baseball, and that's never going to change. So in my opinion, should that take away from what he did as a player with the all-time hits record? No, it shouldn't. But it's on the first paragraph of his Wikipedia page, and this belongs in the first paragraph of Fulmer's Wikipedia page. It does.
First paragraph?
Phillip Fulmer is a player, a national championship winning coach, and an athletic director who was forced to step down due to NCAA violations.
Which now is not the case. It wouldn't read like that, even though we know it's the truth.
Right, exactly. But that's all I'm saying is you can read the first paragraph of something and still look at the positives and say, okay, the positives still outweigh. Look at John Calipari's resume. He's a national championship head coach who's put a lot of players in the NBA. He also has 2 Final Fours vacated at 2 separate schools. That belongs in the opening in the opening crawl of his Wikipedia page. This belongs on Fulmer's Wikipedia page. That doesn't change what he did. I'm with you. Still give Fulmer a statue outside of Neyland. Say thank you for winning us a national title. There's a street named after him, for crying out loud. He's earned the right to have that street named after him. He deserves that respect. There's Phillip Fulmer Day. Every year Tennessee plays Kentucky is called Phillip Fulmer Day in football now. He has a day named after him. He deserves, and I'm fine with all of that. You don't have to get rid of any of that. You just have to acknowledge that, look, you have to accept when you take on the role of athletic director, that has to be part of your legacy, whatever else you did. And part of his legacy was leading Tennessee in a complete dumpster fire of a situation at the end of 2020, at the beginning of 2021.
Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, that like button, even if you disagree with Caleb, which a lot of people do. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. The like button brings more people in. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so. We'll have more news later this week as the Celebrate 98 series is about to launch, and we're excited about that. D says, morning, guys. Yes, and he will gladly do it again for UT like he did before. If he says he knew, then his actions would be liable to the university. He should have gotten the severance. But here's my take. If he really wanted to put the interest of the university ahead of himself, whether or not he was willfully ignorant, whether or not he knew, whether or not he was complicit, he could make all of this go away. Hoghead said Fulmer left the program in a total mess on 2 different occasions. It's true. And then we have the other side where D says, bull stuff, Caleb. He was the recruiter for majors. Some truth to that. There's some truth to that.
All right, let me push back.
Okay.
Fulmer was a very hard worker on the trail. I'm not going to, and you know that better than I do. No, I doubt. I don't know. He probably worked at least as hard as any coach in the 90s at recruiting, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a tireless recruiter.
Yes. There were other tireless recruiters out there that could have been just as successful. That's all I'm saying. I know he was the recruiter for majors, and I'm aware of that. By the way, the Manning thing we all know was about David Cutcliffe. Peyton Manning had a massive, massive level of chemistry with David Cutcliffe, and that is the reason that David Cutcliffe was hired by Ole Miss, because the Manning family loved him so much.
Hoghead points out his legacy includes losing to Wyoming and Memphis. So with that legacy intact, twice leaving a program in total shambles, you do have to include all of that. So how will he be remembered, or is this just a little postscript to his Wikipedia legacy?
I mean, You know, it's funny. College football coaches are judged differently than, for instance, U.S. presidents. U.S. presidents are judged by what the state the country was in at the moment they left office. College football coaches are judged by what they did at their peak. You know what I mean? They're not judged by what state the program was and what they lived. If Fulmer was a U.S. president, he would be judged very negatively because he walked into a good situation in 1993 and he left the program in shambles in 2008. Yes, but in the middle of that, you're right. He did win a national championship and had a bunch of top 5 finishes. But so it's weird. I don't know how you judge head coaches. Do you judge like what they inherited to what they took it to, or do you judge what they did, just their straight up success on the field?
I think it's easier than politicians, actually, because I think the economy can have a delay of a couple of years. I think pretty quickly just by watching football if the talent level is going up or not. And then you can look at game management that results in wins and losses. So I actually think it's easier than politics. It's going to be even easier and quicker nowadays with the transfer portal and NIL. D says that settles it in my mind. Kentucky must remain a yearly opponent. Hoghead is still heard over 98 Arkansas. I'm not even sure what you're talking about there, D. Help me.
Well, to push back on Hoghead, and I mean, see, guys, I'm the most fair-minded person you will ever meet. To be a little Trumpy, I am the most fair person in the history of the world. And so I am extremely fair. I don't think the Wyoming and Memphis losses are that's unfair to Fulmer because every coach has horrible losses. Every coach has bad losses. One of Tennessee's national championship teams in 1950, they lost to a terrible Mississippi State team in the second game of the year. That was under Neyland. Majors, like we've talked about, Majors was good for a bad loss a year.
Yeah, definitely. You were just kind of waiting for it to happen.